Hear that? That's the sound of a patient whose health data is protected from a cyber attack. And that's the sound of a financial system that's digitally secured from bad actors. Right now, there's an invisible war being fought on a digital battlefield that impacts what we do every day. That's why at Peraton, we do the can't be done to help protect the vital systems we rely on. Because if we don't, the alternative is unimaginable. Peraton.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur. I am joined as always by Jamie.
Hello.
Hey everyone. So what's the deal tonight? We're not followed by anybody. Is that the case, or it's just us doing the show, or we might have wrestling, or
I don't know. I know that John won't be doing his shows tonight, but other than that, I am in the dark.
okay.
I think it's just us. I think we're
Well,
carrying the night.
We're the lone wolves again.
And we like it.
That's right. That's how.
No, we don't like it. There's a lot of entertaining stuff that usually comes after us, and
Yeah.
we're kind of like the opening act.
We like to be the lead-in, right?
We
Exactly.
warm up the crowd for the cool stuff that's coming after. But
Yes. Well, and what's good about us being on the radio and not being in front of a live audience is that when we make the announcement that the main acts aren't coming on, nobody throws anything at us.
yeah, well, they might, but it won't hit us.
It won't hit us,
You know,
exactly.
It won't hit us, so
Yes. Yeah.
we don't care.
No,
Uh-huh.
you break your computer screen, that's your problem. That's all right. Now, before we get started, I wanted to get a couple administrative things out of the way. First, I have set up an archive page on the Map Movie Guy, the direct-to-video connoisseur main page. So if you go to the left side, on the left bar there, you'll see right underneath the RSS feed, you'll see a link to the archives. And so that way, if you don't have a TalkShoe account, you can still access all of our previous episodes. So there's that. And then also, I've just found out kind of a cool thing I was telling Jamie about, that when we put our links up on Facebook and
Which
Twitter.
I just did.
Yeah, and they're up there. You can just play it right from there, as far as I know. There should be a little play symbol, and so you can listen to us right from your Facebook or Twitter, wherever you see our posts about the episode. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Always finding out fascinating things.
I know, exactly. So I was getting a quick beverage drink there, but yeah, the whole Facebook Twitter thing. It still amazes me. So there was that.
You spent too many years buried in Tumblr.
Yeah, exactly. Which I believe, if I actually get around to putting a thing on Tumblr for our show before the show, that you'd get a link there too. So it's a matter of I get it done during the day, which I should be getting it done during the day. But if I do, the links are all there for you. Now, what was I going to say? So
I don't know. You've been doing that a lot tonight.
I know. I'm lost without a map all of a sudden. I don't know what happened. So how are you doing, JB? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I am doing really well. I had a really fun episode of the Insomniacs playlist last night, where I did horror scores from haunted house or ghost movies,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a fun show. People seem to enjoy that. And I'll be doing that all through October. I'm going to keep it Halloweeny through the month of October. So there will be some sort of horror theme going on there. Today just had an interview with me dropped from a brand new show by Iris called Creative Juices, where she will be discussing, talking to women from all different walks of the creative life. So whatever, like doing all sorts of things, authors, directors, whatever. And I was very honored to be asked to do her very first show. So I did the inaugural episode, and that was a lot of fun. So if you've ever been sitting around going, I want to know everything possible that I can know about Jamie, which I'm sure no one has, but if you had for a lapse of consciousness or anything, and that thought crossed your mind, you can now hear just about everything you want to know, because I run my mouth for a solid hour. She's in there too, but it's me talking a lot. But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And that is available at creativejuices.blogspot.com. So you can just go and check out the first episode of that show.
Oh, excellent. So it's up now. The episode
is up now. It is ready to be listened to. I have also linked it on Facebook and Twitter, so you can find it there too.
Excellent. That sounds really cool. Yeah, Jen mentioned that actually. She saw it, and she made it. She was like, "Wow, Jamie just does a lot of podcasts," and she was telling me about it. I think she thought it was you doing it was your podcast that somebody else was guesting.
Oh no, yeah. I was actually just a guest, and I was on the other side of the table for once.
Which is it's not bad to be on the other side of the table.
It's not bad. No, it's not bad.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know, I finally got my post up of film Blood of Heroes, Rutger Hauer film that I looked at for, I did the Drunk on VHS podcast with Mo and John back in June. That was like kind of what led to us having this podcast, was that after that second one they decided to kind of create their own night of programming on Mixlr and asked me to do my show. But it's been that long that I've been trying to get that review up, almost 6 months, and I finally got it up. But
slacker?
I know. But it was kind of that same feeling of being like, oh, that's right. There was a time, remembering that time of being, like you said, on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't happen a lot because usually I'm the one talking to other people. So, and it's weird. It's always weird to talk about yourself. I kept thinking, while we were doing the show, I was like, God, I just feel like I'm talking about myself a lot. She's like, well, that's kind of the point.
Right.
Like, I brought you on so you could talk about yourself. I'm like, yeah, but it's weird.
It is a weird thing when people, like you, because like there's that thing where, like some people are really good at talking about themselves, but the rest of us, there's that moment where we're like, God, I'm really overdoing it here. Like, I don't really want to keep, talking about me. And like you said, you have to somehow find a way to like push that voice aside or something,
Yeah, well, it didn't take me long, because if you listen to the show, I got going, and there's some pretty funny stories that I relate, though, I think. And it just talks about being published and making my movie and all, stuff like that. But it was just a really fun conversation, and Iris is so incredible and amazing, and she's very supportive of creativity. And so it's wonderful to talk to her and bounce things off her. She's really good at what she does.
Yeah, that sounds so creativejuices.blogspot.com?
That's it.
Excellent. That sounds cool. I'll have to check that out. And I'll have to get some links up on the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur Facebook as well for that one. So, sorry. Yes. So, what was so tonight's film, we watched The Sacrament, and I kind of teased it on Facebook by saying, are we going to be calling it, the ass-cracrament or something like that, And
the excrement.
The excrement, exactly. But what were your thoughts on The Sacrament?
Okay, well, here we go. Okay, first out of the gate, I want to say that I am a huge Ty West fan.
Okay.
I like everything that he's done well, apart from his shorts. He's done 2 shorts that I've seen that were not very good. But Ty West is known for House of the Devil and The Innkeepers, and way back when The Roost, which I also liked, which was not, that was like his first endeavor. It was not nearly the caliber of, say, something like this, or House of the Devil, which is his like huge, everyone loves that because it's a fantastic film. So I highly recommend that. But I've always been a fan of Ty. And what he's good at is like he's known for his slow burn technique, or or his, you're not going to find typically a whole lot of like roiling action going on in his films. He likes to sit with it, which is exactly why he works best in a feature-length format. His short films just don't really work, and I don't think that says anything negative about his filmmaking style. I think it just says he works better with a feature-length format, and because they're 2 completely different things. And just because you can make an excellent feature film does not necessarily mean you can make an excellent short film, and vice versa. So I am a fan. And so I didn't know anything about this film going into it initially. Now, this was, watching it for this show was the 3rd time that I've seen it.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about it going in. I knew that it had something to do, well, just going by the title and some of the imagery that I'd seen, I figured it had something to do with something cultish, but I didn't know anything beyond that. But I was excited about it, mainly because it was a Ty West film. Well, the first time I watched it, I'm loving it when the song kicks in the beginning. Right. I'm loving the setup. I'm loving the shots. I think he gets some really amazing establishing shots. And the music. I was in it. Like, I'm loving this. And then what happened was things started to smack familiar.
Yeah.
As I'm watching this film, things started to seem really, really, well, familiar. I'm like, huh, this is very Jim Jonesy. Yet there is no indication at any point throughout the film, beginning, end credits, anything like that. There's no indication that this has any relation to the story of Jonestown. So I was like, well, I can see where he's going there. So I'm enjoying it so far. I'll keep on going. But then it starts to get really familiar. And then when the first time we see Father, and so we have this set up with this basically a religious cult kind of thing, and it's it's kind of creepy. I'm digging it. It's very mysterious. But then the first time we see Father, I was watching this with Brian the first time we watched it together, and he turned and he's like, if Father walks in and he's wearing sunglasses, I give up. And I'll be damned if Father didn't walk in and he's wearing sunglasses, looking all the world like Jim Jones, but aged. That's really, he just looks like an older Jim Jones is what he looks like. And I was like, oh, that's a little close. But, let's keep going. So we keep going. And I'll be damned if they didn't whip out the Kool-Aid. I'm like, motherfucker.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, all right. So we've got this clearly Jim Jones character. This is the whole set, like the whole area, the whole setting is clearly just like it's like a wink to Guyana. Like I'm, in the People's Temple. Like I'm okay. I'm still there. We did the Kool-Aid thing. I'm a little bit disappointed by that because I wanted something a little bit more original, but we'll see what happens. Maybe at the end, when we get to the end, it'll be aliens or something. I'm really fully expecting if you're going to hit that close to home to a real story, you're either going to blow it out of the water and bring something totally original or something, So, and that's one of the scenarios that I can think of making that would be okay to make a story that close to a real life event, but not acknowledge the fact that it's a real life event. So I'm waiting, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Now, what in fact does happen is pretty much exactly what went down at Jonestown. There are a few differences. One of them being that the body count was much lower.
Yeah.
In the actual Jonestown event, over 900 people died.
Yes.
And in this film, it was like 179 or something like that.
167. Yeah, it wasn't 200. It wasn't quite 200. So.
It was less than 200 people.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, wide shots of the people on the ground, not this movie's friend,
Yes.
because they looked really spaced out and it just didn't look all that imposing.
Yeah.
So, um, I, when it was over, I just kind of sat stunned. I didn't really know what to do with that, because I'm thinking, if you're going to get that close to an actual event, a really horrific event, I mean, something that was on that scale of horrifying, but it actually happened. But yet you're going to take that and create a story that is clearly that story.
Yeah.
There is no arguing that. It is clearly that story. But then you're going to pare it down to such a to something that's less horrible than what actually happened. I just didn't quite get the mentality behind that. And you can't tell me he couldn't find extras.
Yes.
I mean, if you wanted to make them more people, then, you hold up a flag and extras come flying. It's really not difficult to find extras on a horror film.
Well, not only that, but we're not Rain Man. You could have just called it 900. We would have been okay with that too. We couldn't pick out.
And then, you know what? Give us some closer shots, squish them together a little bit,
Yeah.
make it look a little more crowded. But yeah, I mean, they just blatantly said, nah, it's like 167 people.
Yeah, we'll call it good.
It's really not that bad.
Yeah.
It's less than my graduating class.
Right.
But all of that being said, I think it's a well-made film. I think it's a well-acted film. I think it looks great. I think it's clearly made by a horror filmmaker. There are scenes, even though overall I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a horror film just because it smacks so much of docudrama. I mean, that's what it feels like. But there are beats that are hit within this film that makes it clear that it's made by a horror filmmaker. One of those being when the mute girl brings a note.
Yes.
To them. And that particular scene sticks out to me as being a very horrifying scene. So there are things that he did right. But my issue overall is, why would you take an event that really happened and was so like off the scale horrifying and then just make a mini version of it?
Yeah.
When you compare it to what actually happened, it's really not all that effective at all. I mean, it didn't disturb me because I know that what actually happened was way worse. And so the first time I covered this on a show, this was when it was fresh, and I was outright angry.
Yeah.
I was like outright pissed off about the whole thing. So I'm like, what are you doing? Because like I said, not at any point in the film, after the film, before the film, nowhere is there any kind of acknowledgement whatsoever that that something like this actually took place. And I had seen written reviews by people who'd watched this movie but were unaware, and I don't know how that happens, but they were unaware of the fact that Jonestown had even happened. And he was given full credit for this story.
Were they young? Were they? I mean,
Yeah,
I was.
The only thing I can figure is that they must have been young. And but if you know me, then you know that that's really no excuse.
No, of course not. Yeah.
We have right now at our fingertips, we have everything you've ever wanted to know about anything.
Yeah.
And so, something like that, I just think that is a huge event that happened in our history. I don't see how you miss it.
Yeah, Jonestown, Wikipedia said that up until 9/11, that was the largest single event as far as human, American human lives being taken in a deliberate fashion. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was up until 9/11. That was the largest single event as far as that happening. 900 people died. Outside of a war, I guess is
and it was just, and it left its stain,
Yes.
I mean, and I really don't know how you miss that. I don't. But
Yeah.
okay, there was someone who missed it. They were unaware of it. But then what ended up happening was that Ty West got full credit for the story.
Wow.
He didn't write. He wrote this story.
Yeah.
He made this movie, but are you kidding me? This is basically a ripoff of history, is what this is, with no acknowledgement. So that pissed me off. Because on one hand, I kind of feel like it's a disrespect to the people who actually went through this horrific tragedy.
Yes, the families.
That you were cashing in on what happened to them, but you're not telling anyone that that's
Right.
what you're doing. Now, he was asked on a panel when this film originally screened. Someone mentioned Jonestown to him, and then he fessed up and said that he was always interested in that story and he wanted to make a film, that relayed that. But what you say in a panel and what you say in an interview and what you say, those things don't matter. Those
Yeah.
things don't count, because when you're watching the film, you don't know any of that. You have to assume that your audiences only know what you're giving them when you're watching the film. So I think, honestly, I would have been happy if he had just given a little at the end, something,
Yes.
you know,
Well,
like just fucking dedicated,
yeah.
dedicated to the people who lost their lives in this tragedy. Something,
A simple
I was
note,
livid.
yeah, a simple note where he says, I've always been fascinated by this tragedy, the real tragedy at Jonestown, and I wanted to use this, the story in my own way. I mean, I was one of the things I was thinking about, because for me the film, outside of the fact that, like you said, he pretty much usurped this story and used it on his own, for me, like, so much of the film worked. I mean, the thing I hated was the found footage thing, because that just it makes me seasick. I've had enough of found footage films. I need Dramamine to watch them, and so and I kind of feel like this movie could have been done without the found footage aspect of it. I know that's what made the original Jonestown thing so big, right? Was that one, Jim Jones videotaped it, right? I don't know if he used one of the camera crew's own videotapes, or if he had his own to videotape the suicide.
He kept records of everything. He had
That's right.
everything was audio taped.
That's
I mean,
right.
because he would give his sermons
That's right.
to them. He was constantly speaking to the congregation over loudspeakers.
Right.
All of that stuff was taped.
Yeah.
And so he kept a log of everything that and let me tell you, the things that real Jim Jones did,
Right.
way worse than
Oh yeah,
anything
he's a
that
scary
went on
guy.
in this film.
Yes.
Way fucking worse than anything.
Yeah.
And that's your horror movie right there.
Yes. Well, that's the other thing, is that when you have, I mean, this movie, it worked for me in a lot of ways, and one was that, I guess because, again, knowing the Jonestown thing, you feel like, oh my God, these guys are stuck in this bad situation that's not going to end well for them. But it also had that, Ty West was able to create that element of, you think about like 50s and 60s horror films where, some character's car breaks down and he ends up at a hotel, or he ends up in a town and weird things are happening and he can't get his, almost like the Wicker Man kind of thing, the
Children of the
original
Corn.
Children of the Corn, exactly. And this movie had that element, and what made it scarier was that there was no supernatural aspect to it. And you still were like, ooh, this is creepy. Like, you don't want these guys there. You want to try to get them out of there. And I really like that. But yeah, like you were saying, I mean, I don't know, like, the real Jim Jones, like you said, I mean, and I guess that's part of it too, is that, I think on some levels, because, I didn't think of this until you brought it up now, and you kind of brought it up in a different way, but, Ty West taking the story, right, taking the Jim Jones, or that story, one thing I didn't think about is the fact that because we know the real story and we know what a horrible and scary man he was, it kind of left a lot for the imagination. Like, I didn't know what this guy was going to do at any time, and he actually, like you said, he's much tamer than the real version, and because we have the original story that we can pull from, on some level, I guess it was almost like I was more worried than I should have been, because I had the real story to look at. I never really thought of that. That's kind of another area of lazy writing that I didn't even think about. That by him taking the story, and even if he did different things with it, because we have the original story and we think that's what he's doing, we're waiting for all of these horrible things that Jim Jones did. We're waiting for him to do those. And so that scene at the end where Sam is captured by Jim Jones, and we don't know what he's got planned, because it just kind of ends innocuously with Jim Jones killing himself. Or the father, with father killing him, I should say father. Yes, exactly. Because it ends innocuously like that, Ty West got away with quite a bit there. Because all of the build-up to that scene was actually written for him, 35 years ago. Or 36 years ago now, I guess, yeah.
Right. And, I mean, but, like, technically, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Like, this is really well done. The performances are great. I mean, Father was an imposing figure.
He's great,
I mean,
yeah.
and he was a really creepy guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so my issue isn't with that.
Yeah.
It's just that, why would you take a story and then make it less horrible than it actually is?
Yeah.
I just don't get that. I mean, I don't get that. I don't get the thought process behind that. And one of the arguments that I've heard is that, well, he didn't make the Jim Jones story. I'm like, but,
he kind of did.
I'm like, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He totally did.
Yeah.
Even down to the why couldn't he poison some candy bars? I mean, at
Yeah.
least do something original. At least do something different, something that didn't actually happen. If you want to then claim this as your own,
Right.
you know. And then someone else is like, well, you know, maybe you couldn't get the rights to the rights.
Yeah,
You don't have to have the rights
No.
to an historical event
Right.
to write about it.
Yeah.
You know, how many movies have been made about World War II? How
Yes.
many I mean, there have been movies made about this.
JFK. I don't think Oliver
You know,
Stone needed the rights to tell the JFK
You
thing.
don't.
Yeah.
That is not an issue.
Yeah.
That is not an issue, and that's one of the favorite arguments that people like to throw out in defense of this film. But it's a bullshit argument
Yes.
because you don't have to have the rights to anything to make a film about an historical event. You don't.
Yeah.
Period. And or to write a book about it or the whatever. You don't.
Yeah.
And so that's no excuse. So that excuse is off the table. I don't know. So when the first time I was covering this on a show, it was on the Skeleton Crew, and I was talking to the boys, and these guys, neither of them were really familiar. They knew
Right.
of it. They knew the whole "don't drink the Kool-Aid" thing.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, they had heard about it, but they didn't know the severity of the original event. They didn't know exactly what had taken place. So while we were live on the show, while we were talking on the show, and I was just livid. I'm like, rah, rah, rah.
Yes.
I'm like, and I said, stop right now. I want you both to go right now
Go to Wikipedia.
and look up images. Do a Google search for images
Oh.
of Jonestown
Yes.
right now, and you tell me that those still images of the actual event aren't more horrifying than this
Yes.
entire thing put together.
Yeah.
And so they took a moment. They went and looked. Alex came back and he's like, wow,
Yeah.
you're right. That's some fucked up shit. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it is. So what was he doing again? I'm not
No.
really sure. Now, then another argument is, well, there are people who are unaware of these events because it took place after they were born and they don't know for whatever reason. They're not familiar, and so it is clear that those people are out there. And so he's trying to bring this to light. He's trying to shed light on this horrible event that happened, and he wants people to know more about it.
Yeah, but he's not.
But he's not.
Yeah.
Because if he was, then
Right.
he would give some sort of indication at some point throughout the film that that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he clearly did not. As a matter of fact, at the end of the film, he even has that disclaimer that says I'm not
Oh,
giving
yes,
the exact words, but any
Any likeness or any resemblance to.
to persons living or
Persons.
dead is purely coincidental.
Yes. Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about, Jen and I know Woody Allen is not a good topic right now, but we were watching one of his films the other day, September, which he did. It was it's based on a Chekhov play, and it's it was filmed completely in Mia Farrow's, I think her Vermont home or Connecticut home, like summer home. But in his script, he borrows from Lana Turner's life story. Mia Farrow plays this woman whose mother is a former movie star, and part of their story is that Mia Farrow killed her abusive gangster husband, her mother's abusive gangster husband, when she was a young child, which of course, that's part of Lana Turner's biography. And there's no mention of the fact that he was borrowing from Lana Turner, and I think we just kind of knew because it was just a small fact, but it really didn't play a huge part of the. I shouldn't say like the whole thing wasn't, the woman wasn't playing Lana Turner's entire life. You know what I mean? She was just a former movie star, and this had happened to her. But and so I think in those cases, I think you can borrow from real life, and it's okay. But I think here, originally I was on the side of that when I saw this. When I was coming into this podcast with you tonight, I was on the side of like, hey, he borrowed this story, but he created this story that's like it's similar, or it's most of the thing. But I thought he did really well with a lot of things, and so I thought it was kind of cool that he did that. But now, talking with you about it now, and kind of remembering, well, because I grew up with the Jonestown thing being on the news because it was I was -1 when Jonestown happened. I was born in '79, so obviously I don't. It was one of those things though, because it was so big. Like you said, 900 people, 300 of them were children. were dead. And of course, then there was a congressman who was killed. When because the whole thing happened when the congressman was trying to investigate with the whole crew, and some of them were trying to leave at the time, and it was still huge in the American consciousness. And then I think part of the because of the Jonestown thing, in the early '90s when we had situations like the David Koresh situation, Jonestown was still it was still there enough that I think that played into a lot of our minds when the news was being broadcast about it, and and of course that ended really badly too. But I think during the standoff, we were all thinking Jonestown. Like I think we wanted the FBI to get in there and save these kids and everything because we didn't want another Kool-Aid situation.
Every time any kind of cult situation happens, that's immediately what pops into my head. That's the first thing I think of.
Yeah, Jonestown. And so I had kind of forgotten that because, I mean, even David Koresh has been 20 years now. And like you were saying, the Jonestown thing has faded enough. And so I had kind of, I went to Wikipedia and kind of like was refreshing myself, on some of the things because I was like, as he was he was taking some detours, I was wondering where he was taking the detours. And so, I started kind of getting a sense of it, but I didn't really make the connection until you started talking about Jones being much worse in real life that I started to realize, like, mentally, I was using the real James Jones, the real Jonestown thing to kind of, as my own backdrop to this film, which, that's...
filling in the blank.
Exactly. And so I was making, I can't really see where Ty West begins and Jonestown ends as far as me feeling the mood and the tension, because I was tense for a lot of the film because I knew how it was going to end, but how much of that is Ty West creating mood, and how much of that is the footage that I grew up with, or the stories, or that idea of what happened at Jonestown, and I didn't even think of that until we started talking about this now.
And I think that's probably one of the things that bothers me so much about it. I mean, because I've talked to several people who have said, yes, it's true. It is very close. I think very close is being kind.
Right.
But yes, it's true. It's very close to what happened in Guyana. But that doesn't bother me. I still enjoy the film for what it is.
Yeah.
But and I've tried. I mean, I've watched it 3 times, and I have tried. The second time I was like, you know what? I've got it out of the way. I know what happens. Mm-hmm. So there's not going to be that me sitting there going, please do something different. Please do something different.
Yes.
Because I know that he's not.
Right.
So, that part's gone. And I was like, so maybe I can just actually enjoy it for what it is. It did help. Mm-hmm. With the second time I watched it, I was able to focus more on the atmosphere. I was able to focus more on the moments that I discussed, like the note thing, and the positives did start to come out.
Yeah.
But the problem is that by the time we get to I think the biggest problem is that you do know how it's going to end.
Yes.
And once we hit the Kool-Aid part, there's no going back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no, at that point, well, shit, I know the end of this story.
Yeah.
So there is no more tension. Yeah. There is no more, like, what's gonna happen? Because you know what's gonna happen, because he's basically just following it to the letter.
Yeah.
So to me, it sort of took away, and especially on my initial viewing, because I was so distracted by the fact that why am I watching this story that I already know?
Yeah. And
why am I watching, like a watered down version of this story that I already know? I mean, basically, this is like the Crystal Light version
yes.
of the Kool-Aid. And like, so what's going on here? Why would he do this? And so those things were going through my mind the entire time. On subsequent viewings, I was hoping that I could get past that. And what happens when I watch it subsequent times is when at the very beginning of the movie, when the music kicks in and we start to get the setup, I'm excited every time. Every time I'm excited because I really love that song in the beginning. But it just sort of I love that driving beat. It just sets it's perfect. So every single time I get excited, and I'm like, why do I have problems with this movie? This is awesome. Why do I have issues? And then we get into the parish, and I go, oh, that's why. Because that's why. And then everything comes flooding back to me, and I'm unable to really get that much out of it because I just don't feel that it's horrific enough. I just don't feel like there's enough going on there. No real originality,
Yeah.
and no real surprise, because you know exactly how it's going to go down, and you know exactly how it's going to play out, and it pretty much does. I mean, you take out the congressman and you put in these people from Vice,
Yes.
and well, that's not worse. That's not scarier. They actually live at the end. So
Right.
some of them do.
Well,
So
yeah.
that's not worse.
Yeah. Well, see,
That's not more horrible.
yeah,
That's not disturbing.
well, I was okay with all of that stuff. I think for me, like I was okay with him surviving because he was he was a father to be, and that's for me. I was like, oh man, the idea of the father to be dying, I didn't like that. But one thing I didn't like was Jim Jones let them live and killed himself. And again, I have this idea, like these are things that didn't
Call him Jim Jones.
that
again.
I keep calling him Jim Jones. I
You
keep,
can't help it.
I
You
do. I
can't.
can't. I can't. The father. So father killed himself. But see, I didn't realize a lot of what I was doing with this film. And that scene, I think, is more than any of them. What I was doing with this film was that I was thinking of the original Jim Jones, like, and the film. I think it's kind of like one of those things, like you were calling it the Crystal Light version of what happened. For me, I almost feel like it was the Crystal Light version, but it tasted like Kool-Aid. Somehow in my head, I was able to convince myself that it was Kool-Aid, and then I
You
realized
drank the Kool-Aid.
I did. Yes, I did. And all that ended up happening afterwards apparently was I just had an upset stomach. But it's funny. I wrote down on my notes here. Speaking of the Kool-Aid, was how would you fake drinking the Kool-Aid if you were in that situation? And I was trying to come up with different ways to fake it. Of course, I didn't know that there was a goon squad that would come around and shoot people afterwards, so you'd have to pretend to be dead too. But I was trying to figure out how to avoid drinking the Kool-Aid. But while I was doing that, I realized that I was drinking the Kool-Aid because I was like tense and like, oh, what are you gonna do, And I realized that a lot of it was me taking. And I didn't even dawn on me until right now that I was taking the original story and using that to kind of fuel my own sense of dread in watching it.
And maybe he counted on that.
Yeah.
Which I think that makes it even a little bit worse.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Take the sermon scene, the big, where he actually distributes
Yes, the Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid and all of that, and you take that and you compare it to the actual sermon scene. There are so many beats that hit right on.
Yeah.
I mean, it is practically the same speech.
Mm-hmm.
You even have a person stand up and, try to talk him out of it. In this one, it's a guy, and what actually happened, it was a woman. But,
Right.
Okay, way big difference there.
Yeah.
Way to be original. But
Yes.
it hits so many of the same beats
Yes.
that it is basically just a retelling. And I encourage everyone to watch the Guyana tragedy with Powers Booth, because
Yes.
Powers Booth sells it.
Yeah.
That is a horrific thing right there. When he starts doing the sermon in that film,
Oh.
it is unreal. And it is what it's supposed to be. Now, the father did a great job.
He was
his
good.
performance was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just that, it's just the same. It's the same story, and I just don't understand what he was doing with that, because it was like, oh well, he can make any movie he wants. Well, of course he can. He can make any movie he wants. But that doesn't mean I don't have to sit here scratching my head going, why didn't you take this opportunity to use this story that you've always been fascinated with and inject something original into it?
Right.
Make it a little bit different. Make it a little bit more disturbing or more horrific, or do something with it, but make it make it your own. If you're going to go so far as to change the names and the location and and some of the little things about what happened,
Yeah.
then go even farther and make it completely original.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that.
Yeah, you know what I think in his mind, the originality was the found footage part of it. That's what he feels like, the modern technology aspect, maybe. I don't know, but I think he feels like that's the original part of it, that it's a found footage movie based on Jonestown. And for me, that's not enough. One thing I was thinking about, I wrote down a few original stories that had been reused. You think of Apocalypse Now and Heart of Darkness, for example. Francis Ford Coppola didn't just make the Heart of Darkness and call it Apocalypse Now. It didn't take place in Africa. It didn't, involve what was it? I'm trying to remember all of the parts of the original Heart of Darkness, but he set it in Vietnam. It was a completely different retelling. And of course, he had to change it even more when Marlon Brando came in overweight, so he was not the emaciated Kurtz from the book. But like this movie, you could have had a swamp. It could have taken place in a swamp in the United States, perhaps. I mean, it was shot in Georgia. How hard would it have been to make it in a small part of Georgia, that people can't get to? Or, I mean, there could have been different things, like you said. They could have done something new with the whole package and still had it the semblance of the Jonestown thing.
Right. I mean, he could have taken this thing that he's always been fascinated with, and then turned it into something else with originality.
Yeah.
And I guess that's my biggest problem, is that there is no originality here. And incidentally, them living at the end was not how it was intended to be.
Oh,
The only reason they survived at the end was because Vice said, if you want to use Vice in your movie, they're not going to die.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that was not his original intent.
Yeah,
so even
okay.
that would have been, it was going to be even closer
Yes.
to what happened, except Vice said no way.
Oh, I was wondering about that, because I was like, I didn't think they see, like, that's the part of it. That's the thing with the whole Jonestown part of it, is that, like, when the cameraman goes out to the helicopter, right, because he's escaped. He's escaped the guys who tried to ambush the helicopter. Somehow he's escaped that, and he comes back, and there's the helicopter driver with the arm wound, and he goes back into the compound to get Sam and what is it, Patrick? Was that the other? The brother?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he goes back in to get them. I'm like, why are you going back in? What are you doing? You're going to get killed, And then it turns out they survived it. I didn't know that he was going to be going back in there so that they would both die, or maybe they were going to die at the helicopter. I don't know.
I think in the original version of it, the helicopter got shot down.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the plan, is that they were making their escape, but then the helicopter gets shot down. But don't quote me on that, but I think that's right.
Okay.
But so in the end, what we have is a very well-made film,
Mm-hmm.
a very well-acted film, a film that is very competent
Yes.
in in every way that it should be, except for the fact that the story is completely unoriginal and there's nothing surprising about it.
Yeah.
Because you know how it's all going to play out, and the fact that it's many steps down from the very event that it's emulating.
Yeah.
And I just feel like if you want to do something like that, then you either own it, you actually either own up to what it is,
Mm-hmm.
which at no point, like I said, in no point in this film does he give any indication that that's what this actually is.
Yeah.
So there's no hiding behind I want to bring what happened to light and to
Mm-hmm.
teach people who don't know. Well, if you wanted to do that, you would have done that, and you didn't do that.
Done the whole movie.
Or I loved this story and I wanted to take it and make something of my own and make something original with it. Well, you didn't do that either.
Yeah.
Because it's to the letter.
Well, you didn't do
Except
enough of it.
was bad.
You
You
didn't do enough you didn't do enough on your own. Found footage and a few cameramen instead of a congressman and ABC News team isn't enough. And I think I see. I came out of this with a completely different feeling, but I'm really feeling like that fact that he took a story like this one, like Jonestown, which is so huge. You can think of other stories that have happened recently. Imagine if they did a film called, I don't know, what was, Oklahoma City or something like that, and it's about this guy who backs up a truck filled with fertilizer bombs, into the federal building. But maybe it's not Oklahoma City, maybe it's like Salt Lake City or something like that, and that's the movie. And we're like, well, that's the Timothy McVeigh thing, and because we know what happened with that story, we're gonna see all of it, and we're gonna think all of these horrible things, and even if, say, they decide to spare, like, remember the daycare was one of the things that was hit in the Oklahoma City one, and a lot of kids died in that one. If they spare the daycare and all the kids survive, well, we still watching it because we think it's still the Oklahoma City thing. We're going to think that all the little kids are going to die, and so even if they do survive at the end, we have this history thing to tell us that. And I didn't even really consider the fact that this movie was doing that, where I'm thinking that the father, thinking of him as Jim Jones, and he's going to do all these horrible things that he never does. We don't ever see any of them. He lets us off easy.
He does, and so it finds me. I find it interesting that there are so many people who are like, well, it's a really effective film, but if you take away what you know,
Right.
if you take away what you're able to fill in with what you know about the actual story, and you just look at what's on screen, I really don't see anything. I mean,
I don't know.
Apart from the Kool-Aid thing, anything leading up to that, we don't know.
Right.
I mean, we don't, and we know there's some talk like, oh, we're not allowed to talk about the parish, and
Yes.
and some, I don't know, beatings or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
it a few things come to light, but it's really not all that harrowing for the most part. When we're watching the first part of the parish, this looks like a really awesome place.
Yes. Yeah.
And then which also leads me to when they do the interview, and the AJ Bowen character who is interviewing Father is sold.
Yes.
He loves this place.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, wow, and this is a really great way to live, and I'm I have no intention of making fun of you because I
Right.
think you're doing a great thing here.
Yes.
I'm not trying to bring a negative light. I mean, for all intents and purposes, when they leave the next day, if they had left everything alone, if Father had let things go the way they were, and those people went back and gave the report that they had made that night based on the people that they interviewed, based on interviewing Father, based on everything that they'd seen from the big hoopla that they had and the band and all of that, it would have been a glowing report, and no one would have had shit to say.
Yeah.
And except for the one thing, they do get the note where it's like, help us, and then some people want to leave and they won't let them leave, and then all of a sudden it turns into this death thing. I don't really feel like, from the build up that we get in the beginning of the film, it seems like a really weird, harsh turn, I guess is what I'm
Yes.
trying to say, because they really they didn't know anything negative, and they weren't thinking anything negative.
Right.
And if they had, the smart thing for Father to have done would just have been to usher them out as quickly as possible with the positive things that they knew,
Yeah.
and before they had a chance to find out anything negative, and then the world would be happy and everyone would be okay. It just but it just didn't feel, I don't know, it just didn't feel natural. It didn't feel organic. It didn't, I don't know. I just didn't feel like there was anything so horrible going on behind the scenes that that it would lead to something like that. I mean, and for all the people that they interviewed the day before, everyone was so happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so suddenly you've got a couple of people who want to leave,
Yeah.
and a couple of people who are reporting negative things. But then you've got all these other people who have on camera given these glowing things, even if they were to take back the people who wanted to leave, and those people, started, talking about how bad it was and how all these things were happening. That was just a handful of people.
Yeah.
Compared to all the other people who seem to love this place. I really don't think it would have gone very far.
Well, the other thing that I didn't like about this, and you brought up a really great point as far as the organic nature of it, and I'd completely forgotten about this, was the way that our trio ended up there, and that was by the sister of the photographer wanting to recruit her brother so he could do photography to get the commune money. I just don't see a character like either the father or the real Jim Jones, who obviously the real Jim Jones did not invite anybody down there, right? The congressman came down there, and I think he kind of he wanted to try to snow them over, and it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
But
See, and that all went down very naturally.
Right.
And then you find out he had these contingency plans in place.
Right.
He would do death drills.
Yes.
Leading up to all of that, the whole time they were living there, he would do these death drills to test their devotion.
Yes.
And all of this stuff. Well, we don't know that Father did any of that.
We get no sense of that. Yeah, it was just
no sense of that. No sense at all that there was any kind of ominous presence.
Yeah. No, they just
Sorry,
started.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, but I was going to say that idea to me was very hokey. That idea that the sister, who was essentially the sister was kind of second in command to Father. She was his consort, his right hand man or right hand woman. It was right there. She was the second in command, and she convinces him to invite her brother down with the two people from Vice magazine to do this story, but also to try to recruit the brother so that he can take pictures to make them money. It just, the whole thing sounded absurd. Like, why would, he would
And I think
never.
she wanted their parents' money too. Like
Exactly.
She wanted to try to get him in so they could get their parents' money. And I don't know.
I mean, yeah, that was really, really tough for me to swallow because, of course, the real Jim Jones, he had really good financial backers. He had rich people, even in the United States, that were able to donate money to him. And with Jim Jones, like you said, he'd been doing drills to practice these things. He was ready for it when it happened, and I guess that he kind of knew the moment he attacked when he assaulted the helicopter. I think once he knew he did that he was gonna that the law was gonna come down on him. It was gonna be all over. And so that's when he decided to initiate the mass suicide. That was, again, 900 people is just. My high school had 360 kids, so 3 times my high school was just boom. And like you said, this movie it went a little easy. Still 167 is enough, and it was definitely a brutal scene watching people die. But on the other hand, it was kind of just seeing people choke, and some of it was brutal. But like you said, when we have the real thing, and we have video of it, when we know what happened, it, like you said, it kind of pales in comparison.
It does. And also, cyanide poisoning is a horrible way to die.
Very horrible. Yes.
That is a really painful,
Yeah.
god awful. No one should die that way.
No.
And if you watch footage or just see still photos of the way people died in real life, that really strikes you.
Yes.
It really hits you in the gut as to what these people must have gone through.
Yeah.
We didn't get any of that. These people just sort of drank it and then fell over.
Yes.
I didn't feel that real true sense of horror.
Yeah.
For how these people should have died, because to me it just wasn't portrayed as bad as it should have been.
Yeah.
And like, if you want to be effective, then do that. If you want to disturb me, then make it disturbing.
Yeah.
It was all very quiet.
There were some parts
in comparison.
There were some parts that were disturbing, like when she goes to inject the baby and things like that. But again, like you said, there's going to be a point where Ty West can only do so much, or maybe he could have made it even more gruesome. But the point is that we have the real gruesome that mentally we fall back on, and I think even there I didn't really consider it in my head, but I was mentally like sort of grafting the real tragedy onto what I was seeing on the screen there, and it made it more potent for me. And of course, again, I didn't think the two guys were going to make it because of history, and so I had there was sort of that inevitability, which of course ended up being okay. And so I never really thought of that until we started talking about it, that he kind of cheated in a way by using Jonestown as his story. And then he could kind of do what he wanted from there, but it was a very easy premise. It was an easy starting place.
And I think if you've always been fascinated by Jonestown, which I have too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated by all the dark sides of human nature and all the tragedies that we inflict upon each other.
Mm-hmm.
I find that endlessly fascinating, because humans we're awful.
Yes, we're scary.
We're really bad
mm-hmm.
to each other. So if you've always been fascinated by that and you want to make that movie, make that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Make it.
Yes.
And I will be all over that shit.
Yeah.
And I think that he's definitely a solid filmmaker,
mm-hmm.
and he knows how to put together a film. There's no question there. I don't find anything wrong with the technicals of this film.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I think it falls short of being horrific. This is, for all intents and purposes, a horror film. This was intended to be a horror film, and I just don't see it very horrific, because it was just played too mild.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if you wanted to why not just make that movie.
Yeah.
Just make it. And then you got my attention,
Yeah.
And this time I'm just too busy waiting for something new,
Yeah.
and I didn't get it.
Yeah, or if you're gonna make it, do like, again, like I was talking about with The Heart of Darkness and Apocalypse Now, where it's set in a new place, or do something like that. Again, I, I think that, there's nothing wrong with reimagining a story that happened. And
No.
and again, Jonestown is scary enough that you could set it anywhere. It could be in Alaska. I mean, that's an isolated area. Maybe you got to fly a plane into Alaska to get. I mean, how cool would that be to make it in Alaska and make them some kind of like I don't know Sarah Palin type wacko or something. Like can you imagine something like that, or imagine putting it in Canada, right? And these people seem really nice and Canadian, like really nice Canadian types, with a sinister side that we don't know about, and they're like, oh yeah, let's help you out, eh? Oh, we got a great commune here, eh? We do really great work here. Yeah, we like to chop down the trees and make all our own stuff. Everybody loves it here, eh? We're doing a great job. And then suddenly you start to peel back the layers, this guy from Toronto, oh, you're from Toronto, eh? Yeah, the big city. Oh, yeah. I got a nephew who lives in Hamilton. Yeah, really good. And so, like and I think I'm doing too many yeahs. I think I'm turning Jamaican in the middle there. But the idea, like, something's not right about these Canadians, right? They're creepy. They're in, like, where Moose Factory or Yellowknife or something, and there's something creepy about them, but we don't know what it is. And then you start to peel back the layers, and it's like, oh, geez, and like you said, Ty West, he's a slow burner, so he could slow burn the hell out of that. And next thing you know, we're at the 55-minute mark, and we're trying to get these guys out of here, and they're not going. They can't go. They're stuck in a blizzard or something, and it's yeah, I mean, that's something that could be, that's the kind of thing that I think if he had done something like that, we would have said, wow, Jonestown, yes, but he's doing something new with it, and we can
Right.
appreciate
It was
that.
inspired by, clearly,
Yes.
but there was something fresh and original.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you can either make the actual event, like say the Guyana tragedy,
Mm-hmm.
or you can take it and make something completely new with it,
Yeah.
but it was inspired by an actual event.
Yes.
But what he attempted to do was sort of straddle the line between those two, and then what we get is something that it's not nearly as effective as it should have been.
Yeah.
Is the way it comes out for me. So I'm like, you have endless opportunities available to you to do something, to take your free license and do whatever you want with this story, yet you decide to just basically tell the story, only not quite so bad.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, let us off a little bit easier. And, again, part of that was Vice, telling them that if they were going to use Vice, that they were going to have to let us off a little easier. And to some extent, I like that he let us off easier, because that's the kind of guy I am. Let the guy whose wife is expecting their first kid, let him live. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm actually okay with that. I don't have a problem with it not having a totally dark ending.
Right.
I like the fact that we get a little glimmer of something at the end there. That's okay.
Yeah.
But
the fact that Jonestown is what's driving me, and what's driving all of the tension, I didn't consider it before, but now I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, he kind of got away with a lot there, because he didn't have to do a whole lot. Like you said, it was competently made. The film was competently shot, well acted. All of the elements were there, and like you said, there were some really great points. That the note was a really great one. I thought the interview was chilling, but see, now I'm saying to myself, was the interview chilling, or was I thinking of Jim Jones? You know what I mean? And so now I'm starting to kind of question it all. But I think that's a big thing that he did essentially the same thing, and because it was so close to it. I think if he had said it, for instance, if he had said it in Alaska or Yellowknife or wherever the hell, or in a swamp in Louisiana or something like that, we wouldn't have drawn the inferences right away. We wouldn't have said, okay, compound. We could have thought any kind of compound. You know what I mean? We could have thought this was like Red State, or that this was, I don't know, any kind, Children of the Corn or whatever. And then when the Kool-Aid comes out at the end, we go, whoa, I wasn't, I didn't, I kind of thought maybe, but wow, he actually did it. Wow, that's crazy,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it would have hit you a little bit. You would have been a little bit more surprised by it.
Yes.
Instead, what was happening to me is I'm sitting there going, just please don't do the Kool-Aid. Please don't
Yes.
do the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Please don't do the Kool-Aid, because
Yeah.
everything up to this point has led me to believe that you're going to do the Kool-Aid, and he
Yes.
fucking did the Kool-Aid.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
ah,
Oh,
you
yes.
almost had me.
Yeah.
You almost did, because up until the point where I realized that this was basically a mild retelling of something that we already know,
Yeah.
I was into it.
I was too.
And then I
Yeah.
felt duped.
Well, I was into it with the knowing that it was a mild retelling, but now I realize, like, no, I think I was just buying a. I think Jonestown was what was making the movie better for me, and that's kind of a cheat too. I think that's kind of cheating too.
Yeah, so I guess either way you look at it, either
Yeah.
he expects you to know everything about it and
Yeah.
you rely on your own memories to
Right.
fill in the blanks and make it horrible, or he expects you to know nothing about it
And
and he's
thinks
going to get away with it scot
he
free
thinks he's
as
a
an original
genius.
story.
Yes.
So either way, it's not very shining.
Yes.
It's
Oh.
not very good.
Oof. So what should we give for a final verdict here? Like, if you were born after 1985, you might enjoy this, and don't read Wikipedia. I don't know what the
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite route. I'm
Yeah.
going to say if you want to see if you really want to be disturbed by something, a dark
Yeah.
side of human nature, then look into what really happened.
Yes.
You can go to YouTube. Guyana Tragedy is playing on YouTube, or at least it was not too long ago. Watch that movie.
Yes.
That is a good movie, and Powers Booth is sick. I mean, like
Yeah.
he's
good.
kills it. He
Yeah.
kills that role. Also, you can go to YouTube and watch the actual footage from the final sermon, and that will keep you up at night.
Yes, that's
That shit is scary.
yeah.
And that's real. So I recommend that you just go watch the real stuff.
Yeah, look
That's
into
enough
it.
to keep you, that's enough to give you chills, and
Yeah.
that's enough to make you know exactly where this story came from. And so
Mm-hmm.
even if you've seen this movie and you enjoy it, which I mean I can't say that it's a bad movie, because it's not.
Right.
It's
It's
not
good,
a bad
yeah.
movie. I have completely different issues with it.
Yeah.
But if you've seen this movie and you enjoy it, then I encourage you further to, if for some reason you didn't know that that's what
Yeah.
this was all about, then go now.
Yes.
Go now
Look it
and
up.
look up the actual Jim Jones, the People's Temple, Jonestown, Guyana.
Mhm.
Google any of that shit and it's going to come up.
Yes.
And then maybe you can, I don't know, at least learn something from that.
Yeah, and I think, I just when we were talking about David Koresh, I think the tragedy at Waco, because that was more FBI fueled than, anything that they did there, I think what happened was there was maybe like a dialing back of the whole cult thing, of it being, big, like we need to prevent the next Jonestown. And so maybe that's why it came out of it kind of left the consciousness of Americans to the point that younger people have not heard of it. But I agree with you completely that you need to just get out there, see the documentaries. Any of the documentaries are going to have footage of him. They're going, like you said, if you really want to look at the sermon, like you said, it's going to keep you up at night. I don't know if I would suggest that, but I think if you're going to go into this looking for something that scares you, you're going to get scared much more by watching that. I've never seen the full thing. I've just seen clips of it in some of the other documentaries. And like you said, Guyana with Powers Booth, that one hits it out of the park. And I think maybe it's a good thing to, if you're going to watch this and feel like this is something that's sui generis or on its own or something, know that no, it's not at all. That we grew up with a mindset of what cults can be, what they can do, and kind of understand like that's not as much a part of our consciousness now. But I think to see what that was and know how that affected the 1980s into the early 90s, it was huge. It was as big as a tragedy as we had ever seen in this country. Other than maybe like JFK, and now 9/11 of course is even bigger. But before that, Jonestown was as big as a tragedy we had here in this country.
So maybe his whole goal was to make this movie, be quiet about it, and then wait for people to watch it, and then talk about what actually happened, and
Yeah.
that will then educate people who are unaware of what actually happened. So maybe that's what he was
that was his
counting
plan
on.
the
He's
whole
like,
time.
you know what? People are going to pick up on this, and they're going to talk about it. I don't need to tell them.
That was his plan the whole
You know?
time.
And so if that's it, then I guess it worked, because anybody within the sound of our voice who didn't know already
Yeah.
knows now.
Yeah. So I guess that's it. Go into this if you want, but just know it's not as original as it might seem.
No, it's not original at all.
Not original at all. Yes, exactly.
And so go into that note with a healthy knowledge that that this is something that is taken from something that really happened.
Yeah.
And then look beyond this.
Yes.
Look beyond this into what it's based on.
Yes.
And I think you'll find that infinitely more interesting and disturbing if that's what you're looking for.
Definitely. Well, we are just about out of time. We're running a little over because there isn't anybody after us. But Jamie, what have you got? What projects do you have working on? You mentioned the interview that you did earlier. Again, that was creativejuices.blogspot.com.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, I've got it.
And that's a lot of fun. So go check that out. Give Iris your download. She deserves it. She works hard, and this is her first episode of this show, and I hope it does well because I want to hear her talk to other women and see and hear all about their stories. And beyond that, next week on Insomniac's playlist, I'm going to be doing scores from zombie films. So, and the title of that show will be Shambhalon.
Nice. Nice. I like that.
So that'll be next Tuesday night at 11 p.m. live right here on this very same channel.
Cool.
I'll be doing scores from zombie films.
Nice.
Apart from that, we're going to be talking about Todd Browning's Freaks on Evil Episodes. Because American Horror Story tonight is the premiere episode of this season's American Horror Story Freak Show. So
That's right.
We're going to be talking about that, adding that into our rotation for Evil Episodes, along with The Walking Dead, which will be coming out this weekend. So the new season will be starting with that, which I'm really excited about. So tune into Evil Episodes for all your TV talk. And with the Skeleton Crew, we just recorded our top 10 favorite horror movies of all time.
Oh, nice.
And each of us, it was Alex and I, and we had a guest, and each of us covered our top 10 all-time favorite horror films. And that's difficult. That's hard to do. But it was a lot of fun. It was a fun show. So I encourage people to check that out. Now, the recent show that just dropped is where we talked about all the Abbott and Costello meet the Universal Monsters movies. So that was a lot of fun. And then on Devour the Podcast, we're still doing our Friday the 13th retrospective.
Nice.
So we're going strong with that one. Brian's going to be joining us to discuss part 4.
Excellent. And he was here tonight listening to us, I think.
Yeah,
Excellent.
He was. Which I'm always happy to have him around.
Perfect. Thank you for coming.
And Ryan Lewis from Graveshift Radio joined us for the part 3 episode, but that has not come out yet. It should be coming out soon. What am I missing?
Yeah, no, you've got so many of them. I know.
I can't keep track of my own shit. I think that might be it.
All right. Well, that's cool. Now, as far as the blog goes, as I mentioned earlier, I just posted The Blood of Heroes. I'm not sure what my next one's going to be. Either Seagal Flick Force of Execution, which was when I did a podcast, my solo podcast, which is still kind of buried. We don't know if that one's ever going to come to light, the solo one I did. But also the killing
I was there
season.
with you in spirit.
You were there, yes. You added to the comments, which was great. Which I think, I don't know if you wanted to watch that movie. It was a very bad one, so you lucked out not having to watch that one. But the other one would be the killing season. So one of those two is going to come up. But hopefully soon we are going to get another post up. Hopefully by Monday. I'm trying to get there every week now, but we'll see what happens.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Jen. I love you, baby. I know you're starting to feel better on the road to recovery. So hopefully we'll keep. She'll start feeling a little bit better now. But
I hope so. Feel better, Jen.
Yeah, but just quickly say I love you, baby. And again, thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you guys next week on the Direct to Video podcast.
And I love you to Brian, who's out there listening right now.
Excellent.
Love you, baby.
All right. Perfect. Getting those shout outs to our significant others. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great week.
Yep. See you next time.
With the new Chevy Silverado, you might be driving in this. But with the Silverado's redesigned interior and large infotainment screens, it'll feel more like this. Introducing the new 2022 Chevy Silverado. Find new upgrades. Find new roads. Chevrolet.